All right, we have both senators on the phone. Senator Warner, I believe, is on the phone from the great state of Virginia, and Republican Senator Kit Bond from the great state of Missouri. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Mr. Bond, let me begin with you. The Republican caucus has changed its position and has now agreed to unanimous consent to bring this bill to the floor. Why? May I ask why, Mr. Bond?
It's time that we got the details of this bill laid out to the public, Larry. I made a speech today. People are making speeches. We need to let the people know what's in the bill, because this bill absolutely cripples Main Street. We're hearing from back home, and I want the people back home to know what this bill will do to the businesses, to the credit lenders in our state, and I think every member needs to have his or her constituents know.
So are you going to bring this bill to the floor by cooperating with this unanimous consent in order to kill it or in order to improve it, sir?
We need to cure it. We need to do a lot of things to cure it. And I believe that there are common sense changes that can be made. And my good friend Mark Warner and I have worked on other things. I'm hoping that we can get a majority to change the bad parts. If we continue to have the bad parts in, I will do everything I can to kill it.
Senator Warner, what's going to change on too big to fail? I mean, you and I have talked. You've been one of the most constructive senators on this. I myself have backed the so-called Dodd process. Have we solved too big to fail in the last-minute negotiations with Mr. Dodd and Mr. Shelby? I ask you, Senator Warner of Virginia.
Well, Larry, I don't think there's been any full agreement between Dodd and Shelby. They both said there's no agreement. But I agree with Kit Bond that we need to get this bill to the floor. I think there's actually a solid framework of a good bill here. And on too big to fail, you and I have talked before, Larry, I thought we ought to go ahead and pre-fund. I think we could probably do with less than 50, but some amount of money from the industry so that we can orderly unwind one of these big institutions if they get into drive themselves into the ditch. But if there's another way to do this, as long as taxpayers aren't exposed, as long as we've got availability for capital to keep the lights on in an institution as we unwind it so we don't have the effect of a financial run on the institution, I'm willing to look at other options. And, I would add one thing that, Kit Bond was a former governor. I'm a former governor. We're both used to actually getting stuff done, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of places where you can find common ground.
Senator Warner, I love what you've been saying. I believe you said it in a floor speech or someplace else, that maybe we should take a look at having these big banks raise contingency convertible debt, convertible bonds, which would convert into equity in the event of a crisis or an emergency or a failure. Harvard professor Gregory Mankiw has been saying this for quite some time, and it strikes me as a much better idea than raising bank taxes. Is this convertible bond idea on the table?
Larry, it is, and it's actually one of the areas where I think, again, there's bipartisan agreement. This contingent debt that would convert into equity, it wouldn't, we could use this as an early warning trip signal so that you wouldn't have to wait to the moment of crisis to convert. This could convert at an earlier stage of the crisis or an earlier stage of undue risk-taking. What that would do, of course, would dilute existing shareholders, dilute management, and so consequently, shareholders would always want to keep an eye on management from taking undue risk because they would be paying the price even before you'd have to get to bankruptcy or God forbid, resolution.
I think it's a great market-based solution. Senator Bond, let me just ask you regarding the Republican caucus thinking, spinning off from banks, spinning off derivatives, swaps, and proprietary trading, which was in the Blanche Lincoln bill on derivatives coming out of the Agriculture Committee. What about the spin-off of derivatives? That's a very hot topic on Wall Street, Senator Bond.
Well, I think there's some real arguments that they need to keep some derivatives, some proprietary trading in there to maintain profits. But what I'm worried about is Main Street, and the derivative section as written now would stick it to energy companies, utility companies having to hedge as well as farmers. We've got to get that part out of it. That's the bad part.
So you don't really want a full spin-off. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Well, I think you can make an argument on that. What I want is spinning off Main Street. Get them out of the derivatives. It was not derivatives on Main Street that caused this problem. Get Main Street out. That's what we want. We want out of it. Fix Wall Street. Don't kill Main Street.
Well, Senator Warner, just a last thought. Some people on Wall Street think that Wall Street would be killed if derivatives and swaps and prop trading were spun off. What's your take on that, sir?
Listen, I think there's some parts, it's the Section 106 of the language that's going to need. I understand where they're trying to go, some of my colleagues, but I think we're going to have to look at the unintended consequences. And, not all use of derivatives is bad. Obviously, Main Street can hedge against future risks. Banks want to be able to hedge against their own portfolio risks. So what I think we ought to look at is there could be draconian consequences if we end up seeing abuse of the end-user exemption, if we don't see the majority of these swaps actually move to clearinghouses or onto exchanges. So I think the idea of having some, which in effect what's now in the bill, draconian consequences take place if you pass, again, some level of threshold of abuse, that ought to be looked at. But I do have some concerns about the way the bill's drafted in that section.
Senator Mark Warner, Virginia, Senator Kit Bond of Missouri, we appreciate your time very much, gentlemen. Thanks for helping out.